What's going on, everyone? Coming back with another knife review, and last time I asked you which knife you wanted to see next, and I believe it was this knife that won by just a couple of points, the KBTOOL Small 21, sometimes listed as the Eafengrow or Eafengrow 21. And what is this? Well, I'm going to be blunt with you guys. This is a small Sebenza 21 clone. Not a copy, but also not a counterfeit. The difference between a copy, a clone, and a counterfeit tends to lie upon how much of the original design was taken. While a copy, something like the San Renmu Land Model 810, will take the overall lines, they will still change things about it. Maybe the dimensions, maybe small notes about the handles, or the blade shape, or the thumb studs. And they'll try to find ways to make them very similar but also different, essentially using the original design as a base template for their own design. However close or far apart it may be, it is still technically a different design after enough things have been modified, which is what a copy will do. A clone takes the entire original design and copies it one-to-one, with the exception of things like identifying markers such as logos. So, for example, this doesn't have a CR logo here, and is not claiming to use the same steel that a Sebenza does, nor is it claimed to be made by Chris Reeve in any shape, way, or form. That would be a clone. It looks identical in all ways but copyright infringement in terms of identifying markers. While a counterfeit would be this exact same knife, but with a CR right there and claimed to be S35 VN steel. So this is not a copy, nor is this a counterfeit, but this is a clone. The reason I get into this is it's a very contentious topic, and people all the time like to mention that you shouldn't buy copies, or you shouldn't buy clones, or you shouldn't buy counterfeits, and the problem is they tend to lump them all together as the same thing. And now, me personally, I take a very harsh stance against counterfeits. I do not support them. I don't even really like supporting clones, to be honest with you. I don't personally like supporting this. I'm going to give it a fair and honest review. I'm going to let you guys know all the details. And I will even give it a value scale, which I will not provide to counterfeits. However, I don't really love supporting this because they've gone through no effort to make this their own. However, I see absolutely zero problem with copy designs because we see them in every single walk of life. I'm a musician. The most popular guitars get copied all the time. We don't lose our heads over it. We don't really care. The same thing can be said for fans of media, TV shows, movies, anime. They get copied and essentially just copy-pasted with more generic characters, and it doesn't really matter. People don't lose their minds over it. So I'm not going to lose my mind over it in the knife collecting scene either. To me, a copy is fine. It's maybe a little scummy, but it's not the worst thing in the world, and I'm not really going to lose my head over it. So all that political crap aside, my job here as a reviewer is just to inform you about the knife itself, talk about the intrinsic quality of it, mention how it performed for me, the ergonomics, the materials, and let you guys know if it is worth your hard-earned money. So, let's start with the packaging on this KBTOOL Small 21. It's a black box. That's all it is. Has no identifying markers, nothing. Knife just came just like this. That's what you get. You get a black box with a little bit of foam on the inside. Throw that away. On to the actual knife review now. I'm going to start this how I like to always start my reviews, with the blade. And this is an interesting one because the steel claims to be D2. You guys can see that. It says D2 right there. I'm going to go ahead and call BS right here, right now. And the reason I'm going to do that is I tested this alongside multiple knives that were using real confirmed D2. Alongside that, I also compared it with knives that were using various other steels to get a general idea of where it fell and how it performed. So, in comparison to D2, it didn't hold an edge nearly as well. It was far easier to sharpen, and I had no issues with rusting despite my very high humidity environment. Alright, comparing that against 8CR 13 MOV, I had roughly similar results. Now, 8CR 13 MOV will rust on you, yes, but satin finish and stonewash blades take a lot longer than something like a bead blasted blade. at least where I live. And in terms of rust resistance, I compared it directly against HCR13 blades. None of them got a speck of rust. Edge holding, it was near identical to CRKT HCR14 MOV and Bird Knives HCR13 MOV. I'm talking damn near identical in terms of how long it held an edge, how easily it sharpened, and what kind of edge I was left with afterwards. And it did outperform the likes of 7CR17 MOV, 3CR13 MOV, and 440A. So it claims to be a D2 blade. I'm going to go ahead and bet all my money right now saying it's not. I would say it's 8CR13 MOV or 8CR14 MOV. So, getting that out of the way right now, I'm going to reference it as such because in my opinion, as a knife collector and a knife user and reviewer for over 10 years now, that is what my opinion is. That is what it performs like. The shape is your typical Sebenza style drop point. It is a beautiful blade, and it performs extremely well in terms of slicing. We have a nice high hollow grinding on this one, or I believe it's a hollow grind. It could be a flat grind. Not 100% sure on that, but it feels like a hollow grind. Now, all that said, it slices beautifully. This 2.9-inch blade slices like a dream. It glides through cardboard, it glides through fabric, and I mean, why shouldn't it? This is a well-known and well-refined blade design. You really can't go wrong with this as an EDC blade shape. Has a good amount of belly, has a great, very fine tip, which very much assists with penetrating. Bringing that box in so I can get you some contrast. Oh, that made it worse. You can kind of see. Very fine tip, helps for penetrating clamshell packaging, cardboard boxes, whatever it is you're cutting. It does very well at accentuating that cut. What can I say about the blade negatively? I don't like that it's claimed to be a steel that it's obviously not. But otherwise, it's an extremely well-performing blade. I never had it drag. I never had it get hung up. It just does extremely well. And it does take a very, very sharp edge. It doesn't take very much to get it there. And again, it holds it just like HCR13 or HCR14. Deployment and lockup. First thing I want to say, the centering on this thing is perfect. Absolutely perfect centering. And you don't have to worry about running into that tip like you do with many fake or many copy, clones, and counterfeit Sebenzas. This is very much well tucked away. Centering is absolutely perfect. Deployment is a dream. Now, that was not the case whenever I first got it. It did take some breaking in, but now that I've gotten some wear on it and gotten that grit out of the pivot point, this thing just glides open very, very nicely. Lockup, solid, no play side to side, no play up and down. If it developed any, we could in fact adjust it on that pivot point. So the deployment and lockup is fantastic. I actually love how buttery smooth this thing is, but it has a very strong detent, which means getting it out without flicking it out can sometimes be a bit of a chore. I find I have to approach from underneath here, as opposed to from the side, and really try to keep the blade from flying out. It really does just want to launch itself from the handle. It is a singular thumb stud, and you can see a typical Sebenza style thumb stud, very slick, very volcano designed. It cannot be reversed to the other side. What you see is what you get. But I do love the blue anodizing on that thumb stud. The handle is 3.9 inches long and made out of TC4 titanium. Now, TC4 titanium, from what I understand, is essentially the Chinese equivalent of 6AL4V titanium. And in terms of how it feels in hand, it does have a very similar warmth. It does have a very similar texture. Though I will say that I tend to prefer, from my experience with both, 6AL4V. To me, it just feels slightly more refined. It could just be because the knives I've had with 6AL4V were better made. It could just be that the TC4 titanium may be a little bit lower grade stuff, while being roughly equivalent, maybe it's not quite as well refined as a material. Either way, it's still a very, very nice handle material. It looks great, it feels great in the hand, it's warm to the touch, and ergonomically speaking, this knife is a dream. I mean, it's cloning one of the most famous knives of all time. How could it not be an ergonomic knife? That knife wouldn't have been so popular and sold so well had it not been a very ergonomic blade. Of course, we have the frame lock or Reeve integral lock made out of that titanium, and there is no stainless steel insert bar here because they are cloning one-to-one the Chris Reeve design. And that is a bit of a shame. I would have liked to have seen some kind of stabilizer on that or some kind of plate for making contact with the steel, because over time titanium is soft and it will wear down. An example of a titanium frame lock knife that does this properly is the Sanren Mulan Model 710 Ti, a copy of a Sebenza. And you can see that screw there, which is to hold in a stainless steel insert milled into that titanium scale. I would have liked to have seen something similar here, but c'est la vie, it is what it is. They wanted a 1-to-1 clone. As such, we have the iconic Chris Reeve coffin-style handle with our hole drilled through there. Our lanyard hoop or lanyard hole, which is one of our standoff pillars, also anodized a beautiful blue. Of course, a flow-through pillar design for the knife. And we do have some nice jimping top side of the blade here. How well does it work? It works adequately. It's not super grippy. It's not slick. It does a good job giving your thumb some purchase to lock yourself in. The pocket clip is for right hand tip down carry only, and it moves. And I have that cranked down as much as it can go. This clip moves, which is part of the reason I don't like one screw pocket clips. Beyond that, I'm not super fond of this pocket clip anyways, because it's kind of loose. And being made out of titanium itself, I don't really want to go bending on it because I don't know how much it would take before it loses any of its springiness. So, what you see is what you get. How does it ride in the pocket? Well, one thing I'm going to say is I wear blue jeans a lot, and you can see how little space there is between that clip and that handle. So it does sometimes make it difficult to actually get the knife buried all the way to the top in the pocket. But here I have the cutout pocket. I'll see if I can show you guys. Very often, in my experience, it gets hung right around there, and it takes a fair amount of force to force it down and get it to carry like so. That said, I do love how much of the knife is exposed in the pocket. That's the ideal amount for me to grab. You may prefer a deep carry clip instead. But here's part of the problem with this clip. You can see when it is over this thick material, you can see how much of this is now sticking up, because we do have this narrow section here. There's so much of the pocket clip being pushed upward. In fact, this may be why the clip became loose, as it may have been getting bent out of shape by the jeans I'm wearing. And as a result, this exposed bit of clip can now easily snag on car doors, seat belts, or whatever else you may be walking by. So keep that in mind. I personally do not like the clip on the knife, and that would be more than likely an issue I'd face with a genuine Sebenza as well, since from what I can tell, it uses the exact same pocket clip design. It's really meant for thinner pants, things like slacks. It's not really built for thick denim pockets. The weight on the knife is a very light 2.9 ounces, so this thing does just disappear in the pocket, and it's an ideal weight, in my opinion, for a sub 3-inch blade or around 3-inch blade everyday carry folding knife. The price point on this, what I paid was $31 after tax. It came up to $35, tax and shipping. So $35 for this, is it worth it? I'm going to say very bluntly, very plainly, yes. In terms of pure value, in terms of what you're getting for the money, it's worth $35. I mean, HCR 13 MOV or HCR 14 MOV, whichever one this really is adequate. It's not an amazing steel. You can get better steels at this price point, especially now, but you can also do significantly worse, and I will retain my opinion that HCR 13 and 14 MOV is more than adequate for the average user of an everyday carry folding knife. Okay, we're talking about people who are opening their Amazon bubble mailers. We're talking about people who are slicing up their chicken fried steak at their local diner. We're talking about people who are popping a price tag off the shirt they just got at Target. Okay, we're not looking at extremely high use and heavy duty everyday carry tasks for the average Joe. So I think the steel is perfectly adequate. TC4 titanium frame lock, absolutely more than adequate for the average user. The jimping perfectly serviceable, the clip not so ideal for those who like thicker pants, but overall, for the money, it's got good tolerances, quality fit and finish. I didn't mention this, but it does have that nice rounded spine. It's a quality knife. Now that said, I don't really fully support it. Because, again, I personally like when companies at least make an effort to make their product different. You know, they make it very similar, but they make it different. Probably a famous example I can cite for this, or at least famous 10 years ago, was the Gerber Evo versus CRKT M16. And if you go look up those two knives now, they're both still in production. You can still buy both of them, as far as I know. But the Evo outright copied the M16, but it made changes. They changed how the handle was, like, the holes in the handle a little bit. They changed some elements about the blade. They copied it, but they changed it as well. Copy my homework, but change it a little bit so no one will notice. That's the philosophy that I tend not to mind so much. This, being a clone, is so one-to-one that the only thing making it not a counterfeit is the lack of a logo, and it's a little too close for comfort from me. Not so much that I say that you shouldn't buy it or that I'm going to boycott it. I mean, obviously, I don't see as much of a problem with it as I would a counterfeit, but I don't personally love supporting it. So, what are some competitive options that you can pick up instead of this if you want something that's based on a Chris Reeve Sebenza design, but, maybe it's not copying the Chris Reeve Sebenza so blatantly and so openly to the point of being a clone, as opposed to a copied knife or a inspired knife. Well, I brought this in earlier. This is the Sanrenmu Land Model 710 Ti. VG10 blade on this one, also a TC4 titanium handle. This one with a stainless steel insert on that frame locking bar. Tip down only carry pocket clip. Slightly different blade shape. Mentioned how copies will change things a little bit. You can see that here in the slightly different blade, the ever so slightly different handles, and definitely the different pillar design. This does cost more. This is around $60 to $70. But if you told me pick one knife, your 710 Ti or your KBTOOL Small 21, I'm picking my 710 Ti all day, every day. The fit and finish is even better. The blade steel is better. The titanium actually feels slightly better on this TC4 than this TC4. I like the stability of that lock bar insert. If I had to pick between the two, I'm going with my 710 Ti. But if you can't afford the Ti version, don't worry, because there's always the 710, or now the 7010, to take that slot for you. I have an older 710 here, which means this is HCR 13 MOV. The 7010, even better, Sandvik 12C27. Now, normally I don't say 12C27 is better than HCR 13, but I have used some of Sanrenmu's on their model 911, and it outperformed the HCR 13 from Sanrenmu all day, every day. So, even better blade steel now than what you get on the KBTOOL 21. A copy design, but not a counterfeit, not a clone, so it's a little more further removed. Same general idea as this, but with stainless steel and either HCR or Sandvik 12C, depending on which version of the knife you buy. Alright, how about another Sanrenmu option that I showed earlier? The Sanrenmu Land Model 810. HCR 14 MOV blade, roughly comparable to the blade on the KBTOOL. Stainless steel handle, also a one screw clip, though this one has not loosened on me over time. Jimped locking bar, so very easy to get access to that. Ball bearing in the pivot point. I didn't mention, by the way, this is phosphor bronze washers in its pivot point. But we have ball bearings here, so the action on this thing is just butter. Slightly bigger, slightly heftier, but absolutely an option if you're looking for that Sebenza-like vibe. The next two I'm going to show you are going to be essentially the same knife, but they are the Sheffield Gunnison 440A blade, aluminum handle, liner lock, deep carry clip, and the VTech Titan T1 440C blade, aluminum handle, deep carry clip, liner lock design. Basically the same knife. Both of these would be options in competition against the KBTOOL 21. But what if you don't want a copied or clone type design at all, and you just want a great everyday carry knife for the money? Can we match this in other blades at or around the same price point? Yeah. Here's one that's a little bit more, but I think is definitely worth a little bit extra. This is the Sencut Scepter. Okay, 9CR 18 MOV blade on that. You can barely see that marking, but there it is, which does perform quite a bit better than the HCR 13 over here. Beautiful textured micarta handle, or G10, depending on what your preference is. I like the micarta better. Liner lock design, deep carry clip, which many of you will prefer. We are riding on ball bearings in this pivot point. Your choice of either flipper or thumb studs. Price range about $40, so not that much more than the KBTOOLs. Definitely an option if you wanted a more original design. But what if we went to the other end of that spectrum and said go super, super budget? All right, how about this one? Definitely not as high quality of a knife, but very much a decent performer. The Smith & Wesson Extreme Ops, model CK105. I am not saying this knife is in any way going to be as high quality as the KBTOOL 21. If I'm being honest with you, it's not. This is a step down in practically every way. However, we aren't copying the Sebenza. We are copying the Gerber Harsey Air Ranger, one of my favorite knives of all time. But we're not copying the Sebenza, and that's all people seem to really care about. 7CR17 MOV blade, drop point shape, slices extremely well, takes a super fine edge. Won't hold it quite as well, but that's alright, because the average Joe doesn't need it to. Beautiful blue aluminum handles on this one, very ergonomic in hand. Price range about $12. I feel like that's an apt knife to bring in here on the other end of the spectrum in terms of price. And I got a couple over here from other reviews I want to do, so how about this? Also, very opposite end of the spectrum in terms of price. This is the Kershaw, I believe, Hotline? Model 1310WM. I believe WM standing for Walmart, because as far as I know, this is a Walmart exclusive knife. This is a very, very cool knife that I would love to recommend as a 10 out of 10 for the $10 price point, but there's one major problem with it. The blade steel. This is 3CR13 MOV. If you don't know, that's roughly equivalent to 420 J2. What does that mean? That means it'll take an edge like a freaking scalpel and hold it like a butter knife. It just will not hold the edge, and I find it's not even really adequate for the average Joe's EDC. But everything else about this knife besides the steel, fantastic. The deployment on this thing, beautiful. The blade shape, extremely functional. The flipper design, wonderful, very easy to access and deploy. The handle, very ergonomic. The clip carries beautifully and can be swapped from one side to the next. The glass-filled nylon handle provides superb texture. It is just a fantastic blade, just with a very poor choice of steel. But it's an option. You know, you can $10, $35, $10. You can buy 3 of these for the price of one of these. You know, and if you have even the most basic sharpening skills, you could keep a pocket sharpener on you. You could address the edge in the field if you needed to. So it's something I wanted to bring up. And then how about one knife that I've been carrying a lot myself here recently? This is the Buck Trekker XLT. And I got to be honest with you guys, I'm loving this knife. It's not very often that Buck makes a knife that I enjoy, but this has been one that I have liked very much. Price range, I think MSRP is about $35 on this, but you can get it on the Walmart website for like $18. It is a Walmart exclusive. 420 high carbon stainless steel blade. Buck's 420 has been very hit and miss in my experience, but the one I have here at least has been one of the better performing 420 HCs from Buck. Super easy to sharpen, holds a really good edge, very rust resistant. Beautiful anodized aluminum handle. I love the two-tone nature of this. Liner lock, deep carry, tip up carry clip. 1 phosphor bronze washer, 1 Teflon washer. Between this knife and the KBTOOL 21, I like the Trekker. If I'm being honest with you guys, I like the Trekker just a little bit better. So those are some competitive options to bring in against the KBTOOLs, sometimes marketed as Eafengrow Small 21. A clone of a Chris Reeve Small Sebenza. Is it a good knife? I'm not going to lie to you guys. Yes, it is. It is a very solid knife. I just really wish they would have done something to make it a little bit different for me personally, but there are no Chris Reeve logos. It's not a counterfeit, so if you guys want it, definitely go ahead and go order one. It is worth the money. And I have to say that it does impress me for the amount of money that I paid for it. So, that has been my review on this knife. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, peace, and take care.